The fear always struck them before the final school bell even rang. It was strange how danger could become so predictable, so routine, that even innocents learned to read the signs. For Mia and her little sister, Lily, the last 10 minutes of class were never full of excitement to go home like everyone else. Instead, anxiety sat heavy in their chest, cold and tight, reminding them that the walk between the school gate and the old cracked pavement near the alley was becoming more terrifying with each passing day. The boys who waited for them there had already proven they were capable of more cruelty than two young girls could defend themselves against, and yet the girls kept walking because what choice did they have? They couldn't stay at school forever. They couldn't let their mother worry. They had learned to keep their heads down, to avoid eye contact, to pretend they didn't hear the whispers, the taunts, the threats, but fear grew louder each day, and the world around them grew smaller until they were walking like shadows trying to avoid the sun. If you believe kindness and second chances matter in this world, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel so stories like this reach more hearts. That particular afternoon, the air was thick and humid, carrying the scent of rain before clouds had even gathered. Mia could feel Lily trembling as they walked, their backpacks pressed close to their bodies as if they could somehow shield their fear. They hoped maybe today the bullies wouldn't be there. Maybe the boys had something better to do. Maybe their luck would finally shift. But luck rarely protected the vulnerable. As soon as they rounded the corner, they saw them. 3 boys, older, taller, moving with the kind of confidence that came only from knowing no one had stopped them yet. Their laughter wasn't joyful. It was sharp, mocking, filled with the cruel delight of someone else's discomfort. Every step the girls took toward them felt like walking into the storm. Mia whispered to her sister to stay behind her, trying to sound brave, even though her voice didn't feel like her own. She had learned that courage wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was simply refusing to run even when every instinct screamed to flee. The boys stepped in front of them, blocking the path. They always started with petty taunts, pretending they only wanted to talk, but it never stopped there. They pushed them, grabbed their bags, sprinkled insults like poison. That day, one tried to snatch Lily's notebook and toss it into a puddle. Lily cried and held on with both hands, but the boy pulled harder. Mia fought to get Lily free, but she was too small, too overwhelmed, too outnumbered. The boys laughed, as though the distress of 2 frightened girls was entertainment. With each passing second, Mia wondered how much worse things would get, how far these boys would go before someone finally noticed. But no one walked that route after school. It was always just them, alone. What the bullies didn't know, though, was that this particular street had changed in the past few weeks. A small biker club, one of those groups everyone assumed were rough, loud, angry men, had started meeting near an abandoned workshop a little further down the road. They were protective of the neighborhood, especially after one of their own had lost a daughter to violence years ago. The leader had made it clear if anyone in their community was in danger, they would step in without hesitation. That day, the sound of frightened cries traveled further than the bullies expected. The deep rumble of motorcycle engines was already humming in the distance as the girls struggled. When the bikers rode in, they weren't looking for trouble. They were just finishing a small charity ride for kids at a nearby shelter. But the moment they heard the cries and rounded the corner, they froze, not in uncertainty, but in pure, rising fury. Not a single one of them needed to speak. They killed the engines and stepped off their bikes. The street suddenly became oppressively silent, the kind of silence that makes even the wind pause. The bullies didn't notice at first. They were too busy tormenting the girls. But when one of the bikers shouted sharply enough to crack the air, the boys spun around and instantly paled. Their bravado vanished like smoke in a hurricane. The bikers weren't reckless. They weren't violent men looking for a fight. They were tired men, protective men. Men who understood pain too well to let children feel it alone. They didn't lay a single hand on the bullies. Instead, they calmly escorted the girls to safety while calling the school administrator and the parents of the boys, making sure there was no escaping accountability this time. The bullies, suddenly stripped of the cruelty they'd worn like armor, were shaking more than the girls had ever been. For the first time, someone had stood between them and their victims, and it made all their bravado crumble. The lesson they never thought they'd learn came fast and hit hard. But the story doesn't end at that moment of rescue. The girls were still shaken, their hands trembling, their breath uneven. The bikers stayed with them until their mother arrived, comforting them with voice low and steady, promising that they would patrol that path every day from now on. The mother wept not just from fear of what had happened, but from gratitude, from relief that someone had cared enough to intervene when nobody else had. She hugged her daughters tightly, whispering that they were safe now, that things would be different. And for the first time in weeks, the girls believed her. What came afterward surprised everyone. The leader of the biker group approached the boys and their parents later that week. Instead of threatening them, instead of punishing them, he did something unexpected. He invited the boys to spend a day with the group during their next charity run. He wanted them to understand the weight of responsibility, the meaning of compassion, the reality of how strength should be used, not to harm, but to help. The boys resisted at first. They felt embarrassed, humiliated, but their parents insisted, and so reluctantly they joined. The day changed them. Riding alongside the bikers, watching them deliver school supplies, food, and encouragement to struggling families, the boys began to see themselves differently. They saw the power that came not from intimidation but from support. They saw strength used not to dominate but to uplift. The transformation wasn't instant, but it was real. Slowly, they became quieter, more thoughtful, more aware of how their actions affected others. Eventually, they apologized, not because they were forced to, but because they finally understood the pain they had caused. As for Mia and Lily, their lives shifted too. They began walking home with confidence, not because they expected protection every day, but because they knew they were no longer forgotten. Someone had seen their fear. Someone had cared enough to step in. And sometimes that alone is enough to rebuild a broken sense of safety. The girls started smiling again, laughing again, finding the small joys that had been taken from them. They even joined the charity rides occasionally, waving at the bikers like old friends. Their story became a quiet reminder that bravery isn't always loud. Sometimes it's simply surviving long enough for help to arrive. Near the end of the year, the school invited the biker group to speak about community safety. To everyone's surprise, the 3 former bullies volunteered to help organize the event. They spoke quietly about how they had changed, about the dangers of cruelty and the importance of empathy. Mia and Lily sat in the front row, listening with wide eyes. For them, forgiveness wasn't instant, but they understood something important. Sometimes people need guidance. Sometimes they need a chance to become better. And sometimes, second chances really do change lives. This story is a reminder that compassion can come from unexpected places. That help can arrive in the shape of roaring engines and leather jackets. That even rough-looking heroes carry gentle hearts. And that no matter how dark a path may seem, someone might be watching, ready to step in. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel so more people can hear stories of hope and kindness. Before we end, comment below, should the bikers create a permanent after-school safety patrol? The world can be harsh, but moments like this remind us that there are still protectors among us ordinary people who choose extraordinary kindness.